it live. Yeah, I'm running for Senate myself, so I'm on a tight schedule, says Aaron Rodriguez.
Schedule. Hey guys, welcome back to Testing Normal.
Woo.
This is Curtis.
This is Jordan.
This is a podcast where we talk about anything, everything we want to.
And we're going to prove that tonight.
Oh, yeah. So, tonight, guys, last week, first of all, we kind of broached the subject of the contested election, and now we're going to kind of dive a little bit deeper, a little bit into some of the more kind of relevant topics that Jordan's looked into, and then I've looked a little bit into, and then we also have a fantastic guest here tonight, the one, the only, Jono.
Hey guys,
our main mate.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, dude. Thanks for coming, brother.
Yeah.
So we are gonna go over kind of multiple topics and kind of see what's been on everybody's mind. It's been a pretty wild week, honestly.
It's been like one thing on my mind.
Yeah,
that is what is going on in the world.
One thing
that's
on all of our minds. Well, no, one thing in particular, mostly on Jordan's mind. But
no, multiple things. They all relate kind of similarly.
Yeah.
But I've had a lot of multiple ideas surrounding that.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's fair.
But
so basically, though, over the week,
did we say what episode this is?
79.
79.
Basically, over the week, though, Jordan's flipped.
I didn't flip.
He used to think that the election was rigged, but now he's actually a proponent for Biden in his campaign, and he believes
Crown Queen Harris,
and essentially
whose husband
is a really tight
Harris.
buddy for Harris. Yeah, that's right. So
yeah,
Jordan,
totally.
Jordan, essentially, tell me, do you think the election was rigged?
Yeah, I do.
So, do you still believe that we landed on the moon?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Now, see, that's something I'm not totally sure about.
But the Earth's flat.
But yeah, right. Sure. So, Jordan, you brought up earlier Georgia, and you had some thoughts about it.
Yeah.
I
brought it up by saying its name, and I made a joke, which
I
thought was good. I said the devil's going to come out of Georgia because he went down there. We know from the song.
He was looking for a fiddle, right?
Yeah, and someone just stole his fiddle, and he's about to get really pissed off and leave. But I don't know if that's like almost where we should land, because that's got the most weirdness coming out of it at this point.
Well, let's talk about where is it? Waynes County.
That's Michigan.
Yeah. Okay, so there's some issues.
That's another thing. There's a positive to come out of this. I've done a lot of geography learning in the last 2 weeks. I didn't even know like basically what county I was in, let alone all these crazy counties. Sat in on a Skype call in Wisconsin. That was weird.
Yeah.
I still don't know where Wisconsin is, to be honest with you.
It's that way.
Wait.
Okay.
You literally sat in on a Skype call from somebody in Wisconsin?
So what happened in Wisconsin, because they were trying to change the rules post the Trump team saying that they wanted a recount in a couple of counties, and they were meeting as the voting board to try and change the way that recounts could be done now, just because they got asked to do a recount, and it was split, and there was a couple of Republican representatives and a couple of Democrat representatives. And they were like, we can't change this. If we change this right now, we're just going to get sued further. It doesn't make any sense to. So they kind of held the line and they kept it the way it was. But the reason why they went to Wisconsin is, and this is what's really strange, is Wisconsin is not like every other state. They didn't change the rules for signing up for absentee ballots. But so they have very strict rules for you to get an absentee ballot. And that's the only way that you can get an absentee ballot without an ID in Wisconsin. And they usually have about 1,000 that come in every year to Wisconsin. And if you remember, Wisconsin, I think, is like a 20,000 vote difference. It's not very much. It's very, I mean, 20,000 is a lot of people, but it's, as far as some of these go, it's
kind of a tight race.
Besides Georgia, it's pretty tight. But this year they had over 200,000 requests for ballots that were non-ID ballots.
And you don't think that was just a direct correlation with current pandemic?
I mean, it could be. But
so why do you think that would be nefarious?
Because they had the same dump in when they came in as these other states. And that's really, if you have to kind of back up. And if you just looked at Michigan alone, or just looked at Wisconsin alone, or just looked at Georgia alone, or just looked at Pennsylvania alone, or just Arizona or Nevada all alone, you would think, that's really weird, but you wouldn't necessarily think something's going on here. But they all had the same dump, and some of them had the same exact amount of dumped ballots at the very same time in the middle of the night when they'd paused voting.
Interesting.
So, and I'm not saying, so I would say my opinion is, yes, they were rigged, but I would say also that's really coincidental to happen. It deserves looking into.
Now, here's an interesting thought and question. This is
I'm
kind
sure
of
Jono's over there like, I
Jono,
have some ideas.
yeah, and Jono, of course, obviously, if at any point you have a question about this, jump in.
Just scream.
But so you're saying in multiple states there were injections of votes solely for Biden that took place near the same time in multiple instances.
Yes, but they were the same amount of votes for Biden and for Trump that came in at the same time. Like the numbers are exact.
Okay. So do you think that this was a nefarious act by the DNC specifically, or do you think this would have been an outside governmental attack caused or for the Biden campaign?
I can only make that's why I said
what
that's why I led with
who would be the
I'll give you what I
this?
think in just a second, but let me clarify something first. The reason I stated the way I did is because I think that that's the most important thing to take away from all the oddities is because it's such a big election, it's such a big deal, and there's so many weird coincidences going on. I think it deserves looking into.
Here's the thing though, is we all knew that going into this election, the mail-in ballots were going to be heavily but heavily Democratic, and
correct
and
I predicted that.
And day of election voting was going to be heavily Republican, and so I actually look at all of these things and it makes perfect sense to me, and the percentages as well being similar in each state. Again, I don't actually think
no, the percentages aren't the similar. So when I say that, I actually went and downloaded the data from the state and looked at them, and they're not similar. They are the very same exact number. But
then that raises the question though, like if you're going to rig an election, are you really going to be that dumb as to make it so bleedingly obvious that you rigged the election? That's where I struggle. Because I'm like,
believe me, that's been on my mind. So think about it. so here's what I think happened. So now I'll jump into the hypotheticals of what I think happened, because did I describe how these? So before going into it too far, I have to explain how these voting machines work a little bit, because I've read the manual.
Of course you have.
I've delved deep.
So how do they work?
And I don't know if I described this last week on the podcast. You can tell me. You'd know more than either one of us.
Yeah.
Is how they store a vote when you go in. So whether or not your state has a punch, like a touch screen, or you scan your vote, or you mail in your vote, you would think. And the example that I've been using is when you go into Costco, the person looks at your card and they click the button for how many people come in with you, right? Mm-hmm. So they're like 1, 2, 3. That's an integer. You can't make fractions up or anything like that. So you would think that when someone's voting and you say your vote was you walk past someone and you walk past the right side, you vote for Biden, you right by the left side, you vote for Trump, and the person just goes click, click. So you have integers, and that's how it's stored. These are Biden votes. These are Trump votes.
Yeah, this was
that makes sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's not how these systems store it. What happens is when you scan your ballot, touch the screen, or mail in your ballot, and it gets scanned through a machine, it goes towards the total count of that race. So just use the presidential race, for example. You go in and you vote. It adds 1 to the total votes cast for the presidential candidate. Okay? And then there's a floating array number for each candidate that says, this is the percentage that I get for this candidate, and this is the percentage now for this candidate. So it changes those floating point arrays. So instead of just giving a hard number to either one of them, it has this floating point array. And the reason why is because in the voting machine, it has the ability to do what's called, it's not ranked voting, but it's weighted voting. So you could set the system so it gives Biden 80% and Trump, or gives Biden 1.25 for every vote and Trump 0.75 for every vote for him.
But is the standard, is that actually, did they say something like, we're going to have that aspect of that voting machine be weighted on our voting? Like, or is the standard, it is 1-to-1?
The standard is 1-to-1, but it's like, I've seen the screenshots of the software and how you can change it, and it's like anyone can do it. And they say on all their video, if you go watch their training video, it's on there. Like it's a feature of it in their voting machine. So, but that's the way that it stores it. So if you go look at the raw data that comes in throughout the night, there are fractional votes being passed back and forth between the candidates. And that shouldn't ever happen when voting.
Right. How
because
can you have a fraction of a vote?
Everything is 1-to-1.
Right.
So what's presumed to have happened is that in these the way that Trump won in 2016, beat Hillary, was that he won out in the surrounding areas more so. Those people voted for Trump. So if you were to weight it, that's where you'd want to weight it, but you wouldn't want Biden to win. Because that would if every county flipped blue, it would be very suspect, right? But if you can take some of them so that then he can win in the cities. So the problem is that, and they found this out, this is the only reason this came up as a thing is because it happened in a Michigan county. So not Wayne or any of the one, it was an outlying one, and it actually affected a race that was there. And everyone looked at it and they're like, that doesn't look right, that looks wrong. So what they did is they took the ballots they still had physically with them and they counted them by hand, and it had given 6,000 of the votes to Biden from Trump. And they were like, well, that's weird.
So it deducted Trump's votes.
It took votes from him and switched them to him. So then they hand counted them and it came up right, but no one else did that because they didn't have a small enough race that it affected them. So they started to think, well, that's weird. That's pretty strange. But when it really started to get strange was when those 5 states paused. Some of them were still reporting votes in the middle of the night, and that's when those numbers that were exactly the same came up, and that's where you have these affidavits of people saying really strange things happened. People came in with ballots after hours that we hadn't had yet, that hadn't been turned in, and some of them had envelopes, some of them didn't, some of them had signatures, some of them didn't, some of them had addresses, some of them didn't, and then, but the one thing that was the same amongst all of them that they all reported was they had no down ticket votes. They only had Biden and no other people voted for. And then there's a specific place in Georgia where they said they didn't let us look at it, but the dot wasn't even filled in by a human. It just looked printed in. There was no like circle where someone had filled it in. It looked like it was just one solid circle printed.
Interesting.
And that's the place that this week, like 2 days ago, a lady had pictures of ballots and envelopes in a dumpster, and they were shredding them, and she was following them, and one of the cars following them was one of the like, I can't remember who it was. One of the like voting people in Georgia was following the shredder truck. It was like they have live video of it on the internet.
So here's the thing, right?
Those are all the dots. That looks suspect.
So for me when I look at it all, and I think I mentioned to you before we came on, I've kind of stayed away from it all this week.
Yeah.
But when I look at it, I see the way that it's supposedly claimed that Democrats rigged the election,
right?
And like I said before, they're so obvious. And I just think if it was rigged, like these people are smarter than to make it this obvious. It's dumb. But on the flip side of that, what's happening now with the Republicans and the accusations and the narrative that actually has been built for months before the election, I actually think is a way smarter, more intelligent and hole-proof way of rigging an election. I actually think that a lot of this stuff can be not explained away, but could be seen as Republicans trying to rig the election.
No, and I've thought about it that way,
Yeah.
but then again, that's where I start to think they have these affidavits, and those people, if they're lying, can go to jail because they're under oath already.
That's true, but if you believe so strongly that the stake of the future of our country is at stake.
But 200 in each one of these states and growing.
Yeah, totally. Yeah,
I
man.
mean, if you got
here's the thing. So I've thought about this too. They've asked, we want affidavits from people that say the contrary, and no one's willing to go under oath and say the contrary.
Yeah, but that could be because. I don't know.
So like,
it's hard to,
and they also have some Democrat people who are under oath as well that are saying the same thing. Like, they were mistreating these people.
Yeah, but money talks, right? I mean, you could pay them to do.
Yeah, but then if they're wrong, and then also you think about number one. So if if Trump was doing that and he fails at it, he could face prison.
Yeah, he could.
And so could the lawyers, and so could all the people that are doing this.
But you could say the same thing from whoever is supposedly responsible for rigging the election.
So,
right?
So here's what I like. If you want to like back up and look at it from like a 30,000 foot level, I'm with you. I totally get it. But if this is truly what they say it is, and has been around for as long as they say it is, this isn't an organization that's just the Democrats. So today, you wouldn't have known because you were ignoring it, but Sidney Powell was announced as not being on Trump's team.
Well, I did see something on Facebook about that.
That actually wasn't a new announcement. They were clarifying. Because she hasn't been funded by him at all. She's been doing it pro bono, on her own, with her own money, and with her legal team as well.
Who is she with, though? Like, what was the organization that she's with?
She's with her own foundation. So if people want to donate
is she part of AON?
No.
Or what's
no.
Is she part of? I think this is what I'd be curious about. If she's affiliated with a specific organization and that organization's paying her, so who is paying that organization?
I don't think so. I think as far as I know, she's independent because she has other people working with her, and she's also working with Flynn.
Can you say who Sidney Powell is?
Sidney Powell is a lawyer. If you go look, and you should, if you want to know what's going on, if you watch their press briefing where they brought their allegations out and kind of made what they call their quote. Opening statement of the allegations that they would be bringing, they have divided that up because as she's dug into things, she had to redefine herself. Not redefine, but like re-clarify, I'm not working and being paid by Trump, because she's bringing criminal accusations to different states across lines. She's saying this is not just Republicans. Some Republicans have paid to be in office. Democrats have paid to be in office, and it's being funded by people that do not want our country to run well. So she is pulling back and saying, remember, I'm not being paid by Trump. I'm working with them. If I find evidence that they need, we're sharing evidence, but I'm not being paid for by him. And there's multiple lawyers that are doing it. And this all the like I saw a thing this morning, CNN said this is, 33 cases have been thrown out for Trump. That's not true. They have 3. They had one that was just pulled out last night, the Pennsylvania one, and it was because it was in a lower circuit court that wasn't going to rule on it anyway, but it's part of the legal process to work their way up to SCOTUS. So they are now they have now refiled with the court below Supreme Court in Pennsylvania, and that is one of only 3 that they have. And the only one that's been thrown out for their team is that Pennsylvania one that they've appealed. That's it. And the only other one that's been tossed was their own doing in Michigan when Michigan said we're not certifying the vote yet. And they said, okay, we'll just let you continue on with your process. And they're not doing anything in Michigan right now.
So the two things.
So that's what to me is like, there's so much noise and there's so much disinformation as to what's actually going on. You have to like dig down and like find it in multiple spots. I was telling my wife, I was like, it's like when someone like looks into like something in the Bible. If it only shows up in one place, probably not a big deal. You have to, and you do this in research too, you can't just find one thing that supports your idea. You wouldn't do that in science either. You want to find like multiple things that point to the same thing that are kind of telling a story, so you can kind of, hone in that direction.
Right. And I get what you're saying as far as like wanting to have almost multiple sources, I guess, of the same kind of inconsistencies.
Well, and looking to see who's saying what and is what they're saying real.
But what is interesting to me is that I'm seeing a common theme that was frustrating, I guess I would also say, is I don't think it's good for any country or any sovereign state to have such a powerful media that the media decides and claims who is elected and who wins the election.
That's a big deal.
That's a big thing that I have a big reservation with, no matter what, because the media has a bias, no matter what. No matter what you say, we have very biased media in our country. So I'm a huge kind of advocate for saying the media should not be the one that makes the final call, and they've done that consistently throughout the several elections, essentially. So that's frustrating me. But then what ties into that is the fact that media. It seems like they
digest.
Are trying to. It seems like they are trying to. Like with Sidney Powell, for example, they are not having equal reporting of both sides in the way of this is what the Trump campaign is saying and this is what they're concerned about, they won't even acknowledge that,
which is weird to me.
And to the point where they're not even saying like we're not going to acknowledge it, but they're saying completely false claims without any type of evidence or support. So it's like, are you ready to say that they have no evidence?
Right.
Do you know that?
Yeah.
Rather than letting it go through the court, and that's where the evidence would come.
Yeah, because that's where I think people don't understand is you wouldn't ever if you saw on the news someone getting arrested on murder charges, you wouldn't be like, well, F the news, they didn't show me the proof. Because they have to go to an evidentiary hearing. They have to have discovery. They have to, and all this is like, we want to know these answers, but that's why in our system, we don't have a swearing in until January 20th. We don't have a safe harbor date on certifying these dates until December 14th of this year. So there's this time that's there and everyone wants to know. And I totally get it. I want to know too. I want to know the truth, no matter which direction it is. Like, tell me what the truth is. But to say like, they don't have evidence, like Fox News cutting away from their thing. They're like, well, they're saying things that are false, so we can't even show you this. What do you think, that the public is stupid? Like, they can't see give them the information, let them make their own mind up. Or are you trying to make up their own mind? Like, state what you're going to say. Now, so I have a question for you, Jono, and this is think about this. Have you seen any media show proof that what their allegations, so they've presented statistical data to the public. So this is like the data that they've given so far is like statistical data from sworn witnesses that are statisticians that look into these types of things and say, these are anomalies that can't happen when humans vote, or it's very, very slim. And then they have these people that are saying, this is what was happening at the poll places. Here's the anomalies I saw. Here's the vote dumps I saw. Here's the fake ballots I think I saw. But they're not providing, have you seen anyone provide any proof to the contrary? Besides just saying it's not there, that it's unbased.
No, I haven't. I mean, I have, but I haven't seen. To be honest, again, and this is from my own research. But yeah. I mean, I haven't honestly found a convincing argument either way.
Right.
I don't. I mean, I know that affidavits are admissible in court, but I don't necessarily think that they hold much weight. For me personally, right. I don't look at that and go, "Oh, mate, smoking gun, cut and dry case, done." Right. Like, it's it's people saying something that could be true or could be bullshit.
Right. But when you file something, you can file with affidavits and say we're going to discovery, because then you can get the warrants and you can get the subpoenas for information to support your case, because you can't do any of that before you have a hearing. Mm-hmm. You can say these are the allegations in a criminal case, and so far Sydney's pushing the criminal side of things, and so these are kind of split issues now. You can't push a criminal case to try to win an election. They have to push this. They're not even saying this is fraud. They're saying there's evidence of fraud that tainted this election, and here's the areas in the ballots that are in question, and someone has to decide that.
So what I will say, as far as when you said they're not saying it's fraud, there's many situations where Rudy Giuliani is saying there's multiple.
He is,
hold on,
but they're not.
Hold on a second.
Okay.
There's many situations where him and his legal representatives are saying there's mass fraud that's taking place.
Yes.
But then when they get to the actual judicial court and the judge specifically asks them, "Is this a fraud case?"
Yes.
He says this is not a fraud case.
That's because that's not how they filed it.
So, but what I'm saying is the judge specifically asks, "Are you concerned that there is fraud currently taking place?" And Giuliani himself, and that's happened in multiple cases where they will say to the media, there is fraud taking place. But then when they get in front of the judge, they say, no, this is not fraud.
The reason why is because they're filing them differently because of the way that the judicial system works. If he files a fraud case, it goes to a different place. So
then maybe they shouldn't be saying that. So it seems like they're spreading seeds of dissension.
That's why they're saying right now, they re-clarified, Sydney's doing this. Fraud is criminal. We're pushing that this election looks suspect and needs to be looked at.
But they were saying it looked suspect 6 months ago. Like, I mean,
okay, so if you go look, because Trump retweeted this week, he said it when Romney ran on Twitter. Yeah. He said, watch the voting machines. Things are switching to Obama. But did he say it
when he was voting, when he was running?
No.
So why wouldn't he say it when he was running, but he would say it when Romney ran?
He said it in 2012 and retweeted himself.
Why? Okay, so how about this? Because I remember you had brought this up, and this was I think a question that a lot of people would be asking and wondering. Yeah. Why would there not be a fervent push to investigate the election when Trump won. Why wouldn't he be so concerned about fraudulent activity when he won, but he's concerned when he's not winning?
Super good question, because I've thought about this a lot. And I think that we haven't. So I was talking to a friend this week, and he was like, I hate Trump. I hate him, I hate him, I hate him. But if this fraud stuff is real, like giving it that, if this is real and it's truly as big as what they're claiming, and it's really pervasive and it's going through our, like there's people tainted in our government that needs to be cleaned. I can't stand Trump. And I said, well, why can't you stand him? I said, if this is true, so just hypothetically say it is, that means the media has been lying about him for a very long time and set up your image of who he is. And who knows what else they have done.
I mean, I don't agree with that. He's set up his own image.
Oh no, he's a total
Twitter in particular. Twitter's been a very
total New Yorker. I totally get it. But as far as like some of the other, like they stretched out for 4 years the whole Russian thing, and he was even trying to declassify that this last week to show people the truth of it, and they won't let him.
Yeah, the Russia thing in particular was a really frustrating thing in the respect of the media now says we need to not push for investigating anything in the situation when they did spend 4 years of Trump's candidacy to push for Russia.
This is the genius of Trump, though. Okay, so he could be pushing for them to declassify all the Russia stuff, knowing full well that there's no way that that's going to happen.
True.
And all of a sudden, he looks like, oh, look at me.
Oh, that's a good point.
I'm trying to get them to declassify. He knew he couldn't get it declassified, and it just sets himself up to. I mean, I think that honestly, Trump is a genius, and I think he's done an awful lot of stuff to set things up in a way that this was always going to happen. What's happening right now is always going to happen.
But on the flip side of that,
you didn't answer though. You didn't answer specifically like why that would have been a fraudulent situation with Romney and this election, but not when he won.
So I think he was probably poised to try and push it in that one, but he won, and that's what everyone has said. If you go look at the numbers, if you just look at the numbers and erase the names, he was winning a lot on Friday night, and throw out not throw it out, but there were a lot of states that counted their mail-in ballots with everything else. There was even Arizona did it backwards. Okay. So in-person votes actually got counted following days, and the other ones came in, they counted those first, and it was pretty evenly split. And yes, maybe some people, but even like Oregon, we're all mail-in ballots. And a lot of states, they made it mandatory that everyone got a mail-in ballot. So you could kind of say that, except that if you go look at how the numbers come in, they all came in at these same moments. But in
that situation, I was wondering if when they say there's a concern that all these ballots come in at the same moment, is it they've spent 12 hours counting these votes, and now they said, okay, these votes go into the computer and put that number.
They all came in about 4 hours after they all paused counting. So
did they agree? Have you looked into this? Did they agree that nobody was going to put any votes into the machine while we're paused?
Well,
they said
we're stopping counting and paused counting. So you shouldn't be counting to then put more votes in. But even if they did, okay, let's say they did. Let's say they said they paused, but they kept counting, whatever.
Sure.
Wayne County had 4 times more that got posted in the morning than could have physically gone through the machines if you did it perfectly that whole night in the amount of time that they had.
Are they putting them through a machine?
Yes.
Is that what they're not actually looking at
in Wayne County? Yes, they're.
Oh, interesting.
So if someone sat there and perfectly set them in there and counted them all as fast as they could with as many machines as they had, it was 4 times more ballots than they could have done in that amount of time.
That's suspicious if that's true.
So
and Wayne County is the county that if you go look at all eligible voters, all of them, say they all showed up at one time, there was still 3 times more ballots than that amount of people.
Is this a fact?
Yes.
Yeah, is it a fact?
No. I went and looked, data spreadsheet downloaded. I just
feel like this is a fact. The media can't. There's just no way to suppress this.
No, and that's why it's coming out. It's getting there, and that's why I'm saying, I wanted to go see because the media is saying one thing. I literally have watched because I watch CNN too. I watch CNN, I watch Fox, whatever. I'll pull that up and I'll watch them in between things, and I'll be doing other things, and I'll look over. I'm like, what are they talking about? And they'll say something, and I go to Twitter, and I'm seeing raw data that says the exact opposite thing. It's like I'm living in an Orwellian
Is
or
it possible
1984
that
world.
raw data that you're looking at is not
No,
accurate data?
because get this. This is so New York Times, thank you. You did it. You're the only one that left your data unencrypted. Good job. Because everyone that gets those tickers that go across the bottom of the screen, I said this last week too, they all come from the same place. Okay? They all get dumped into one spot, and they all report. They report the total of votes, and then they report for every race, but we'll just go with the presidential one to make it less confusing. They give the breakdown of percentages for each person, and they're time stamped every time they come in. It checks every minute. Okay? It does it all night long, and you can take all that data in, throw it into a very big machine, because it's a big file. Like we're talking like 500 megabytes of text. That's how much, like, for the entire data set is for one state. Okay? And you can do it down to the county, all that kind of stuff. You can throw it in, you can plot it, and you can go, what the heck? So all the line that the fake, debunked picture where the line jumped up like that. No, it's in there. It's in the data. Like, it jumps at that exact time.
Here's the thing, though. Okay, so, and this is for me, regardless of data, regardless of what the media says, regardless of anything else. The thing for me that is the most telling is that if the Democrats or whoever were wanting to rig the election for the Democratic Party, there's no way on God's green earth that they would want to have Biden in as president and not have control of the Senate and have a large House majority. There's just no way, right? And so the fact that so many tickets were split, and we're in a situation where we've got Biden most likely elected as the president, and a Senate most likely controlled by the Republicans, and a large number of Democratic seats that were supposedly guaranteed having flipped to the Republican side. To me, I look at that and I go, that just doesn't look like fraud. Because if they have Biden in as president without the Senate and without a big majority in the House, he's not going to get anything that they want done. And so it just doesn't make sense to me.
I think what happened, the only way that I can explain that in my head is either A, you're right, like something's wrong. Like, it doesn't matter who's doing it. I can't look at that data and go, there's nothing wrong with that. Because it looks like dirty data. That's what it looks like. But it's not. It's because the machine is fixing it. So some of them, you can just go in. I mean, it is a Windows 10 computer that you can it literally, when it counts, puts the tallies into one person and into another person, but you can just drag and drop them like the mod can, or the admin can. And the call, so there was a call recording that I heard from, like, it's confusing how it is, but I think I have the link to it that I can put in our show notes. But you can hear the voice of one of these Dominion guys who has now skipped the country. He's gone. Cannot be found. His name is Eric something. And he's on the phone, and he says, "Don't worry, Trump's fucked. I've got this. I've got it. He's got the loss." Like, or something. I'm kind of paraphrasing, but he says, like, I fixed it. That's coming from the Michigan Wayne County spot that has too many votes. That's where he was calling from. And that they have on record, that's where he was. And now they cannot find him.
So how much of that call do you get to hear? Is it just that? Or do
No. You can hear the guy on the phone, like, talking. Because it's what it is it's a guy that was trying to infiltrate Antifa. And so he's pretending to be Antifa, and he'd been doing that for a while. And he was on a call, like a conference call, and there's this guy, he's like, Eric, and he said his full name. So he Googled him, and it popped up, and he's one of the heads of Dominion. He's like, well, that's strange. And then he starts digging, and finds his social media, and it's like all anti-Trump, all Antifa, tons of different stuff, which has since been scrubbed. His LinkedIn has been scrubbed, but he captured it all, so you can go look at the screenshots of what he found. And now it's missing. It's gone completely, along with most all of the employees of Dominion are now removed from LinkedIn. They were supposed to show up at a Pennsylvania hearing on Monday just for questioning, because Pennsylvania's like, we want to know what's going on. And they said, yeah, we'll come. Well, Sunday night, they called and said, we're not coming, and no one can find them. They're not here anymore. They cleaned shop. One of their main headquarters is in Toronto, which shockingly shares office space with a known Soros organization, and it's gone. Like, they are gone from that spot.
Yeah, look, that's certainly it's weird. And
yes.
You can't. It's hard to know how to explain that.
No, I don't know how. Like, I'm just when I look at it, I just go, what the heck? Like, what's going? That's why I said, like, I'm just trying to figure out what's going on in my world.
It is weird, but I just can't get by the fact that if they rigged this election, it's the worst rigging of an election.
And
ever.
So I think what happened.
A horrible job.
So I think what happened with all that said, like all that said, I think that people were really sick of this lockdown. They're sick of what's going on, and Biden was not convincing. He spent his entire campaign he spent in his basement. And didn't do any campaigning.
I mean, he is old. He's at risk.
He's old.
Yeah.
I don't think Harris is that liked by people.
Right.
Well, not in this community,
and so
but others.
If you go look at the states that are clearly normal, so if you compare like Montana's numbers to pick any of the Maine that are like Nevada's or Wisconsin or whatever, it doesn't have any of these irregularities. It looks normal. It's randomized, but people on the Democratic side favored Trump 30%. And on the Republican side, they favored him 80%. And so I think what happened is that, and I think this is what happened in 2016 when he got voted in, because if you remember, Hillary was pretty pissed. She thought she had it.
Oh yeah.
And she could have done a recount. She was closer in margins than Georgia is right now. And she didn't. Why? Why would she not try to do that? I mean, you could say, so there's a couple of reasons. You could say, well, she just conceded because she's going to concede, but she seemed pretty pissed. There's recording phone calls of her reacting and throwing a hissy fit and all that kind of stuff.
I mean, to be fair, I would have been pissed too if I'd lost to
totally
Donald Trump.
fine. But
Like,
yeah.
Are you kidding?
Totally. That's one explanation. The other explanation is she thought she had it. And why would she think she had it? If what they're alleging is
all the polling data.
If they're alleging is what is true, then that's the case. But if Trump was winning those outside areas more than they thought, he could have, statistically, if you go look at it, he was beating Biden way more than he beat Hillary in the outer areas of these states. And if he was winning
before they started getting the ballots
even with their supposed rigging of the weighting of the votes, even with Biden at 1.25 and him at 0.75 of the weighted vote, he was still beating him more, so that when the city came in, he would have still won by a small margin. So that's when they paused the voting and they had to bring in these ballots, and it got messy.
Okay,
because they weren't expecting to have to do that.
Have you looked into this? Have you guys looked into this pertaining to the pausing? It
happened in Venezuela.
Well, okay, but in the U.S., is it a normal standard practice to pause counting after a certain time at night?
No.
Like, is it normal? Has it happened before in previous elections?
I've never seen it in my entire life.
At 2 a.m., they're like, "Oh, we're exhausted. Let's pause it." If anybody out there that's listening, if you guys can look up and if you let us know, has pausing of election counting taken place before?
And all just those 5 states.
Here's the thing, though. Like, again, like pausing the count, it genuinely, in my opinion, it doesn't help any, because if they were organized, right, they could have done it in a way in which they didn't need to pause the count, and it wouldn't look as suspicious.
But I think that's what they tried to do with the polls, because the polls were way off.
Yeah.
Okay.
They were. Yeah.
And they thought that if you set that algorithm, it's supposed to be able to like figure out, but it was beating it out. And so if you're trying to scramble to get the win, you would get messy, or somebody had been paid a lot of money to do it, which is kind of where I'm landing, is like, because you got to think, like, the Democrats and the Republicans, anybody in the United States is pretty too stupid to pull something like this off. Like, right? I mean, that's a big operation.
It's huge.
But if it was a nefarious group, which if you look, I was actually read through a link. It's a long link. It's a deep dive.
Your mom says the pause has never happened before in the U.S. election.
So there you go.
So that's fascinating.
So this link,
that's crazy.
Every person that has posted it on social media has gotten blocked and banned. Okay, in the last day. And this link is basically a deep dive with supporting links out to the different histories of how Dominion was formed and has some of the major holdings in it, and it ties it essentially to like the number 3 richest person in China.
Wait.
To Dominion.
Dominion. And
Yes.
Dominion is a company that has
these machines that run this now like altered
That seems
Smartmatic
sketchy of
software.
China.
And all these states, okay, the 5 main states that were all like, what the heck happened? They all got a software update the night before.
Right. Yeah, I'd heard about that.
Why?
Whatever.
And they're not supposed to be on the internet, but they were. And the reason I know is because there was a couple different people. There's been a guy that's been looking into these for years because he said they're so insecure. He's been doing a deep dive looking into them. He scoured and found where they were linking out to and gave the dark web IP addresses and hidden URLs to where they could be reached. And so they got like either some of them were reports of people showing up and flashing them with a new firmware, or they got an OTA over the web update.
So here's my question though. So if you don't, okay, so the election's rigged, say.
Yeah.
Do you think that Joe Biden or Kamala Harris or any of these people actually had any clue about it? Like, were they involved in it, or do you think that it was an outside entity?
So that's where you start to get into like,
cabal.
I do think they do. I do think that they do. There's so much information that's been buried about Biden doing these Ukraine deals. Okay, you can go listen to the voicemails. You can go listen to them. Ukraine basically coming out saying these people were siphoning money, and it comes from the Biden family. Like, you can go listen to them. Biden's on the phone call. It's totally him. And there's other things that have come out this week that support that, and nothing has happened from it. So if he's willing to do that, yeah, I do think he's willing to pay to get the presidency. So I think it's totally. I think it's plausible.
So then you think then as well in 2016,
Trump
that Hillary.
I think Trump won enough to beat the algorithm.
Okay, so but you think that Hillary was also in on this conspiracy to rig the election?
Well, if you go to the Clinton Foundation webpage, they're the ones that lobbied to get Dominion put into Georgia.
So here, like, I find it way easier to believe that Hillary Clinton would have done something like
that.
Yeah,
no.
Don't get me wrong.
Sure.
Like, I totally could see Hillary Clinton being involved in something like that.
So I mean, I would take it a step further, and I would say I think that Hillary is involved, because she has so many different ties to these Dominion machines in Georgia, everywhere. She does. And it's not, they don't even hide it. It's on their website. If you go to the Clinton Foundation, you can find it.
It was interesting because those Dominion machines in Texas, they had tried to install them in Texas, right? But the Texas
they said these are too insecure.
Or security department said, we don't trust these machines
But there's one
enough,
area
so
that did hire someone that used to work at Dominion, and it's the first time in like 40 years that it flipped blue.
You mean one county in Texas?
One county is run by a guy that used to be with Dominion, and it flipped blue.
Here's the thing though. You say I mean that's nuts. But you say like, okay, so like Hillary has all these ties and she doesn't even try to hide it, right? And it's like, again, I say, well, okay, then either she's really dumb or just I guess supremely arrogant that she doesn't even feel that she needs to hide.
Well, that's
things.
the thing is I think there's way more people that are there that are hiding it, because what's now being supposed, and I believe it, because they have ties. They did this raid in Germany for the servers, and they say they're tied to this in Frankfurt, Germany, which in 2013 was a hidden CIA operative base. So I think that they have done rigged elections for other countries before, which has been supposed for a while, that they helped put people into power that they wanted instead in other countries with their own software. I think that that's what they're using, and that the CIA, or at least some turned people in the CIA, might be a part of it.
I think it's interesting to note, at least, that I was reading a news article about Russia today, and Putin specifically said that, we've heard about different countries congratulating Biden. So Germany, Angela Merkel. Angela Mercury. She congratulated him, and several other prominent leaders did. But Putin today
won't.
He specifically said, he's like, it's too early for me to congratulate Biden.
Well,
I can't make that call.
And even
I'm like, whoa, that's fascinating for even though a country that potentially we
even
had
Vegas voting Vegas hasn't called it, because there's people that bet on it.
I bet. Well, it'd be interesting to see what
the guy in the
Vegas
UK that
odds
has
are right
$5
now,
million on, or £5 million on
Yeah,
this.
David still hasn't paid me. It's outrageous.
Let's wait until those courts.
You're gonna have to pay him because here's what's crazy.
I'm gonna have to pay him.
That's what Jordan.
Oh, that's right. You think Trump's gonna end up?
Yeah, that's
winning.
what he thinks.
It's not gonna happen.
So
You're crazy.
So this week,
It's not gonna get flipped.
oh, it's going to.
No, it's not. Okay, can we have a little side bet on this?
I already bet people on it.
Let's have a
What do
bet.
you want to bet me?
I
don't want to bet a lot because this is recorded and my wife will hear it.
Oh, well, but I mean, you're confident. You're so confident that you're gonna win.
So are you.
I know, but so then you shouldn't. It's not really taking a bet. It's just taking my money. You
Yeah.
know? I don't know, $500.
No.
No. Oh, more?
No.
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 Oh, okay.
I'll tell you what.
lunch.
I'll take you to lunch.
Done.
How's that?
Okay. Good deal.
Yeah. No. There's so much that's in it, and here's what people don't understand.
Quick question. Sorry, just to
No, go for it.
Has Curtis ever gotten through a podcast without going to the restroom?
Yeah, but recently it's been a problem again. I think his prostate's gotten enlarged.
Yeah, maybe he has some issues. You should go get that checked out.
He should get that checked. We could check it out for him.
We could.
Right here live if we want. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, like,
Yeah, I'd be down.
oh, that is not the right camera.
Oh man.
How did he get to the main camera? I don't even know. Curtis, how did you get to the main camera? Or does it not go to the main camera?
We just actually.
It's what?
We just offered to.
Oh.
It's the same one as you.
I can fix it.
It's you and me.
Just go to you and you talk for a second. I'll fix it.
Okay.
We just offered to check your prostate here on
Yeah?
air if you'd like.
Really?
Yeah.
Because you were gonna give me a massage,
I was gonna give you a massage,
but if we're gonna do
Yeah.
a prostate massage, I'd have to really kind of prepare. Honestly, I have to do a cleanse, a colon cleanse
you
before.
wanna do a colon
before I
cleanse,
don't
mate?
wanna-
Yeah,
I don't want
totally.
you to get dirty.
Yeah,
nothing
no,
like that.
could be real bad.
Yeah,
we don't want that.
So, guys, our picture's going to be off for a little bit here. Sorry. There we go. But not to switch gears too much, but along the lines of...
Try that main one now. What in the world?
There we go. Yeah, I like it. So, along the lines of... involvement. So, like, Jono, you were saying, did Hillary know what was going on? Did Biden, did Kamala? Is there an overarching force? If this is like a big conspiracy, and whatnot. And there's been some rumors. Jordan was alluding to the fact that this Dominion company was partially owned by an individual who was upper kind of echelon in the Chinese government. Not Chinese government, but maybe government. I don't know.
Well, he's like the number
Wealth-wise.
3 like wealthiest people there.
So one interesting thing, it does seem interesting that if there was a government to benefit from the chaos and or disharmony in the U.S., it does seem like China would have a benefit from it in some ways, right? And there's been all this kind of rumor mill as far as like, did China intend to have the virus release? I know that's a big contentious issue. Was that something that accidentally happened? Did it come from a lab? Did it not? But I was reading an interesting article today talking about how a lot of the Eastern major powers like Japan and China is like their economies actually are doing extremely well for a specific reason right now. And that is because of the lockdown that's been pandemic worldwide.
Yeah.
They are mass producing laptops,
phones,
screens, IT technology, and it's being used by the countries that are now being locked down. And it's like, okay, well, what if there's a multifaceted, I don't know if I'd say, this is getting kind of out there, but multifaceted attack from all these different angles.
I think
China
has the most to, honestly, China has a lot to gain from Biden winning the presidency.
Yes.
Like
tariffs.
Trump has taken an extremely hard line on China,
right?
Which I think someone needed to.
Well, yeah, someone needs to hold them in check, and I think that actually, I hope my dad's not watching this because he gets very mad when I talk about this stuff. But I actually would argue that Trump's foreign policy has been
good for the U.S.
Very good for the U.S.
Yeah.
And
he's not for war,
right? Yeah, and so
he's gone a long way to keep that from happening,
right?
And this drug thing he did this week was really good. Mm-hmm. Did you hear about that?
Yeah.
What did he do? Drug week?
So he's basically like removing the middlemen from So like you get a prescription drug and they're like a generic one, and the discount doesn't go to you, it goes to the middleman between your insurance company and you. So you still pay the high price, but your middleman gets a kickback.
Oh, okay.
So he's basically removing that and saying
Right.
that's illegal. We need to get this down, and it's going to be we're going to go off the market price that the world pays, which is good. So I want to go back to your Harris thing, why I think she is tied to this too.
Yeah.
And that's because she is married to Douglas Emhoff. Okay. He works. So here, back up a little bit. In 2014, Smartmatic CEO and a few other people created SGO Corporation, a holding company that owns Smartmatic and other government techs. One of the people's is Sir Nigel Knowles, global CEO of DLL Piper. Who else works at DLL Piper? Number 2 on the list is a partner named Douglas Emhoff. So her husband works for a company that has holdings in Smartmatic software that runs on the Dominion voting machines.
And Dominion voting machines.
Again,
Kamala Harris's
too
husband
obvious.
works in software
It's
that
too
runs
But they've been,
obvious.
but if they've been, what they're saying is this isn't just now. This has been going on for 20 years.
Yeah, sure.
And so it was actually, if you want to be like really honest, it was created in the Bush administration.
the Bush Senior.
No,
Yeah, I think it was.
because then 2 weeks into Obama, he found out about it, and they are saying they're finding evidence that he put it into play in our own country starting then. And now looking at the numbers, and we'll know this week if they present the evidence, because they said they're going to present evidence to prove this, that at least in one state, but they suspect all states that electronically count injected for every Democratic person 35,000 votes. And so we'll see if they can prove that and they can show that evidence in court, because they're not going to come out and say, here's the evidence. They're going to say, this is what we're going to allege, and we have to prove it in court. And they're putting their money where their mouth is and going to court with it. And if that's the case, Republicans were winning a lot already.
Dominion 2003. Yeah.
So I think that they were winning a lot. To go back to your question of like why they didn't win the House and Senate, they weren't landslides. But I think that people actually are like coming through this COVID thing. They're like, I don't want to be locked down anymore. And they're voting more conservative because they think that they'll get their ability to move around more.
I think that honestly, I mean, and this is what I did, is a lot of people in this election said, I want to be done with Trump, but I do not want to give the Democrats all that power. So I'll vote for Biden.
Maybe.
And then I will vote Republican on the rest of my ticket.
Except the stats don't say that.
Or
and I would agree with you. I would have thought people would have done that, but if you go look at the other states, even the states where like looking outside the cities and stuff, if you look at the data before it paused, Trump was winning amongst Democrats pretty heavily.
Or the other simple, I guess not simple explanation, but the other explanation could be if this software was able to push votes towards Biden, perhaps they programmed it so it didn't interfere with the other parts, with the other votes.
And
like
that would be another thing to think.
It didn't
maybe they
interfere
thought,
with the other aspects.
hey, we've got all these other people thinking that they thought they might just aggregate them normally because of their popularity, and they were actually out there campaigning and stuff, and they thought, well, people are moving towards a more progressive mindset. Maybe we'll get this blue wave. They clearly did not, but we'll see. I'm just saying, like, what I see in the data that actually can go get and see, there's enough that there's something wrong. It looks way off in all these states. I think it should be investigated, because if it's true, and they can prove it, if it's true, Biden should not be president if he did in fact pay to be president.
What if the data's fake though?
It's
I mean,
not.
I know
it's what runs the ticker. You can run it against the ticker. It's what the ticker was doing all through the night.
It's matching what the TV was showing.
It comes from the ticker information at the bottom of the screen on CNN, NBC, Fox, New York Times. Like, all their little tickers are the same code, and you can go get it for every state.
So what you're saying, though, is that what was on the screen was inaccurate.
I'm saying that what the screen was doing was being accurate, and that's where people started to notice it too. So the two things that really tipped people off was there was a couple scenes on a couple different channels that when they changed, if you paused it, Trump went down by 6,500 votes, and Biden went up by 6,500 votes. And so they went and they timestamped it, okay? So they timestamped that spot, and when they loaded the data up, they went to those spots, and they were like, there's some statistical anomalies going on in this spot. So they started tagging all those spots and then going through the data and finding those different places. Well, then when YouTube went down a week and a half ago, do you remember that? YouTube went down for an hour.
Oh, I didn't know.
So it went down for an hour, and when it came back up, all the live streams of the voting were gone.
I think all live streams were gone.
No. So no, okay. If someone was live streaming, it was gone. But I'm saying those video on demand live streams were gone.
Dumb. It's just too dumb. It's too dumb. It's too dumb. It's not. That to me is the biggest thing.
But then why is it happening?
It's not.
That's what I'm saying. Like, why is it happening?
Maybe there actually was maybe there actually was a software malfunction. Maybe it wasn't a nefarious intent, but maybe there was actually a
because
software
think of how many people aren't even talking about what we're talking about, right? Because the media is saying something completely different. They're not here. I said this last week, and I'll say it again. I wish that they would just say, we think that Biden won, but this is what they're alleging, and there's a court process, and this is how it goes. We have this in our system in case this is fraud. We don't think it is. Or, hey, I have a wild idea. Bring a statistician on that can prove the numbers wrong. But there's so many statisticians out there that aren't Republican that are saying this looks wrong. In fact, in 2016, there was a bunch of statisticians that wrote a paper and submitted it to Hillary's campaign and said, you need to look at Michigan. There was voter fraud going on. And they didn't act on it.
Did she lose Michigan?
Yes, by like 10,000 votes.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
And so I got to thinking, why does the media, I mean, we all know they lean left. Even Fox leans left, okay? Like, they all do. Fox is not as close, but they're definitely biased. Why? And so I looked, and I think I sent this to you the other day. I was like, who owns CNN? Do you know?
AT&T? Is it AT&T?
Who does own CNN?
So
Bill Gates.
No.
The director of Staple Street Capital that owns Dominion was named AT&T chairman of board.
Called it.
November 6th after the election. And AT&T owns CNN.
Called it. Yeah, AT&T. So, but they don't own Fox, do they?
Why?
I don't know. They have lots of money. They want to own a TV
but
station.
Why?
No, I know.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
So this is where I'm saying, like, all these like things that you could like connect out here. Something's wrong, and if it is rigged, if it is fraud, if someone's paying to, even if Biden doesn't know, and they're paying to get him to power because they have something on him, I personally think he's guilty in all these Ukraine things, so they've got him dead to rights no matter what, so he can be bought pretty stinking easy. All they've got to do is just say, fine, get rid of him, and Harris is in there. And her husband's part of Dominion, which is part of all these nefarious groups that they can track to it, of this link that has proof to all of it, that if I post it on Twitter right now, I get banned for 12 hours.
Well, here's the thing, right, is that if you're right about all of this, we'll probably be dead here pretty soon. So
maybe.
Then we'll know.
No. This is what I would encourage. There's two thoughts here. Two thoughts.
Yeah.
One is...
And I'm not pushing...
I don't think... Hold on. This is what I would encourage people in general. It's not...
Don't take my word.
It's not the mass public as a whole. I would say it is good to question things, and it's good to have open eyes and ears to inconsistencies. But I think we have to, in this moment, you have to allow for the legal process to take place.
Yes.
And so rather than pushing and saying, "Hey, I need to go get my," if you're on the side of like, I need to fight right now, I need to fight this, like, you're not going to make the situation better by raising violence or harming or threatening other people. Like, the best thing you can do is encourage and support the legal system to take place, because it does seem like it's taking place. It is now.
And it was like with Bush Gore, that's the last one that I can remember doing something like this when I was a kid. It was 37 days. It was 37 days before he finally conceded. It was in SCOTUS, and it was in Florida. It went to there, and they ruled he probably, if he had appealed, but he was asked not to by the DNC, if he had appealed, he probably would have won that election. But he didn't, and it was decided in court 37 days after. We're not even close to that yet.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think you just allow the courts to do what it is that they need to do.
Yeah.
I was talking to Luke earlier this evening. And here's the scary thing, is that
there's a lot of scary things.
The only outcome I think where we end up at this point, where we end up in a reasonable position as a country, is if Biden wins the election and it's proven that there was no fraud. Because the other options are, it's proven that there was fraud.
Yeah.
The election gets overturned.
Yep.
And there's a civil war, I guarantee you. There is. The other option is it gets proven that there was fraud, it doesn't get overturned, and there's a civil war. Honestly, those are the directions that we're headed in, and that's honestly...
I'm a little more hopeful on that, because I do think it's going to get overturned. I don't think it's going to be... It's going to take a lot of moving pieces to make it clean. But I do think, as I've looked around, because there are polls now of people like, do you think this has been rigged? And the numbers have been growing in both parties, like Democrats. And I know that those can be, but at this point, people are like, do you think it's rigged? They're not going to be, no one's shy about that. Like, it's not like, are you voting for Trump? And someone's terrified that they're going to call it a bigot or something. But it's 30% now. It was like 10% last week. It's like 30% of Democrats do think that there is some fraud at play. And there's about 80% of Republicans think that.
I certainly think, I think that there probably is fraud. I think there's fraud in every election.
I do too.
Especially election of this scale with this many people and these many amount of moving parts. There's absolutely fraud. There is in every election. To me, whether or not it's possible that there has been fraud to the scale that it's actually swung the election.
Yeah.
I don't think so. I just don't think that that's actually.
I don't know.
Possible.
I mean, if it's always been pretty close. And if this is say this was going on with the voting machines, you could do it in a way. I just think that Trump did win. I mean, it's hard to believe, but looking at the data, he was winning handily in other states. That I think he broke the algorithm, and they got messy, and they didn't want him to win. They didn't want 4 more years of Trump because it would destroy their plan. Whatever their plan is, it would destroy whatever it was. But it doesn't. They're not just blaming Democrats at this point. That's what's crazy, is that they're saying there are Republican people who are in there. They're just Republican by name only, and one of them that they're alleging, and we talked about this a little bit before him, and we kind of skipped over Georgia in the beginning, but I think that's going to be the first state to flip. I think it's going to flip probably this week or next. And I think that that's the state that spent $100 million in the last month putting these Dominion machines in the last minute and had tons and tons and tons of problems with software.
I'm going to go on the record and say there's no way George is flipping anyway.
Okay. I think it's going to.
Well, I'll play that back to you in 2 weeks.
Jordan has a suspicion that it's going to flip within the next week. Is that right?
I said this week or next. I think they'll file in Georgia this week. And it's going to be decided in SCOTUS.
So
they did rearrange SCOTUS this week.
What does that mean if they rearranged?
I didn't know that.
They gave the placements of the judges for the states to be on the standby and ready for Pennsylvania, for Georgia, for Michigan, for Wisconsin.
Oh, as far as
Nevada,
the rulings,
and Arizona, and they are all conservative judges.
Yeah. So here's the thing, though. I actually have a little more. Maybe I view things through rose-colored glasses, but it doesn't actually matter to me whether or not judges are conservative or liberal.
Yeah.
If they are truly
impartial,
doing their job, which is to
interpret the law.
Yeah.
Right. Then it actually doesn't matter if they're conservative or liberal.
Yeah.
It doesn't
I agree.
Matter.
And I think they should do the right thing, but it's like you'd said, and it's a process, and it takes time. I mean, it literally, this process could go into January, and people don't realize it could be confirmed. It can go all the way up until 11:59 a.m. on January 20th.
Even if it gets to the point, Jordan, where, like we talked about last week, where they say maybe it wasn't necessarily a nefarious intention. Maybe it was some type of software malfunction and or insufficiencies in the software.
Yeah.
Then it does go to a revote, and a revote through
the
won't
go to revote
through the states,
no.
the Senate. Why couldn't it?
Oh no!
It
would go to each state would get one
each
vote.
Each state it'd go through a state vote.
So talk to me about why you're so convinced that Georgia's going to flip.
Why?
Yeah.
I think because it has the most irregularities of any of the states.
So they did a hand recount of the
No,
whole
they did
state.
not.
Yeah, they did.
No, they did not. They counted them the same way that they did. So if there were injected ballots,
So
they
why did they
recounted the same
why
ballots.
did-
And they found 3 thumb drives that had votes on them for Trump in those
Yeah.
in 3 different counties.
So why?
There was
why,
like
then
4,000
Why,
though or
why were the
something.
governor and secretary of state saying that they did a hand recount?
I don't know why, but I went and looked at what they
and
did.
The
They did-
governor's Republican.
They did no audit. I know. And I've watched his video.
But wait, Jordan, how do you know they didn't do hand recounts?
Because I went and looked at what they asked for and what they said they were going to do. The mainstream media doesn't say anything about that. What they needed to do is an actual audit to see where they came from. Otherwise, you're just going to get the same number again.
Well, they didn't get the same number though. There was a discrepancy.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it wasn't.
They found
it wasn't
missing
enormous.
ones, and then when that person reported it, they immediately got fired. It wasn't their fault. They didn't do it. Why? Why'd they get fired?
Why would the Republican Party want to out?
I
Republican
think
president?
that guy. Honestly, and it's just me spitballing. I think that he got a kickback to throw the election. I think the
check his bank account.
I think the governor did, and the Secretary of State, and I think that we will see that when they push that litigation.
But so to throw your argument back against you, why would they do that if they risk going to jail?
Because it's a lot of money, and they were told, "We've done this before, and you're not going to get caught. We've done it a lot."
Some crazy thoughts.
I'm just throwing my ideas out there from what I've seen. Like, that's, to me, if I run through everything, because I've thought all the angles that we've talked about. Like, what if Trump did it? He stacked it against them. What if it's just somebody trying to mess with it? Nobody knows what's going on. But it really just keeps pointing back to people that want control in government, and they're already, like, if you look at Biden's plan for, like, I want to join the Paris Act. I want to join back with these groups. I want to lock down with the world. I want to, like, he's already pushing these agendas that we were kept from. That, like, you know, Trump. I watched Trump's G20 thing, and they said he didn't go. Well, he only went to one part, and his statement was
played his 298th round of golf.
I know.
I love how they keep
Which,
track of
honestly,
that stuff, man.
it's
hilarious.
just,
Stupid.
but they're so angry
Yeah.
that he won't come out and make a statement. And I think it's just a game. I think to him, it's the art of war. He doesn't need to come out and say anything. He's waiting for people to make mistakes. If they are, and if that's what's really going on, that's what it looks like to me. But he came out and said, like, we didn't join the Paris deal, but still we went forward, and here's our reduction numbers. We reduced our carbon output more than anyone else in the world without being a part of it.
Can I be honest with you though again?
Yeah.
And I've said that a few times tonight because I want to make sure that I'm being honest.
No, do it.
I actually think that, and I kind of mentioned this a little bit on your stream last week, but
Yeah.
I actually don't think Trump wants to win.
Really?
No. And the reason is, like right now, is because if he doesn't win,
Yeah.
he has far more power for the long term than if he was to just win the election for another 4 years.
Maybe, unless he really meant what he said, and that was nobody else wanted to clean this up, and I had to.
So
if I take him at his word and what he said, maybe that's actually what
But
he's
Jonah,
doing.
why do you
We're
think he would have more
taking
power? In what way would he have more power
Okay,
not
so
being the president?
because there is 70 plus million people in this country who voted for him, and that's the second highest tally of votes that anyone has ever received for president, behind Joe Biden, right?
Allegedly.
Allegedly. Allegedly.
We don't even know how many votes he got. That's if this is true.
Yeah, and so what we've seen is that Trump has a huge following of people, and I mean you see it too in the small amount that the media will show of Trump support. You see that people fervently, passionately follow this guy, right? And so if he loses this election with that enormous base of people, and there's question as to whether or not the election was legitimate.
Right.
He could start his own country.
He could start his own country, but he's a kingmaker in the Republican Party, and the reason being is because Republicans will have no choice, because their entire base now is reliant on Donald Trump, and so Donald Trump will choose who is going to be.
So this is a good point, John. I had thought about this before the election even took place, that if he loses, and he loses under the veil of this is a massive fraudulent activity, that does give him much more power once he's out of the presidency, not only in the respect of having some form of...
Maybe it's unplugged. Oh, no, it came back.
Not only in the matter of having sway with future elections, but also like power of, man, when he writes a book, he's going to make $100 million off that book. When he goes on tour, he's going to make, $50 million because his popularity is going to be off the charts in that respect. So whether he wins or not, the question of the validity of this past election is only good for him.
Right. It's only good for him. And honestly, and I've said it a few times, he'd been setting this up for months. No, and the reason I say...
sorry.
And the reason I say the man is a genius is because, win or lose, because of the way that he has crafted this story, right? He wins. It doesn't matter.
Either way.
Yeah.
Either way, Donald
and
Trump wins.
That's another angle of it. I'm kind of leaning... Because I've thought about that too. I've thought of tons of different angles on this. I don't think personally that's what he's doing. I think he's trying to make good on what he said, and he never planned on actually quote unquote draining the swamp until his second term.
Why? Why would he wait till second term?
Because if he did it and didn't finish it, he wouldn't get his second term.
But it was always going to be unlikely, in my opinion, that he was going to get a second term anyway. And the reason being...
I thought so too,
because
but a lot of people voted for him.
A lot of people did vote for him, yeah. But the reason I thought that it was unlikely he was ever going to get a second term was because so many people voted for Trump because they just couldn't bear the thought of Hillary Clinton being president. And this time you had a far more moderate person in Biden running against him, and so a lot of those people were always going to vote for Biden this time. But what we've seen, which is interesting, is that I think everyone knew that people were going to come out and force voting this year.
Yeah.
And so it actually ended up happening on both sides, because there are so many right-wing people that were like, you know what, all these liberals are going to come out, all these liberals and moderates are going to come out voting.
Right.
And so we have to vote too. And it's really fascinating what ended up happening. But I thought all along he had a very, very slim chance of winning a second term. I mean, it was... Because say what you will about some of his policies, which have been good. He's look, the country was already divided when he came in, but he's just added fuel to the fire. And America's never been more divided domestically in our lifetime.
That's where I think if you back up and look at, I think that their whole point was to debase him the whole time. And I totally agree with you, the way he talks and stuff like that. He doesn't do himself any favors at all. But they've spent 4 years basically dragging the dude through the mud, whether he deserved it or not. It's more than any other president has ever been done.
Yeah, but he doesn't. Yes, that's true. But he has not helped himself.
He could have acted differently.
I mean, if he had acted differently,
but he
had done things differently and not given them the opportunity to drag him through the mud. But he just kept throwing wood on that fire.
Yeah,
he was basically he was begging.
I don't think
drag me through the coals.
I don't think he cared. Or, and this is where I've come to. I think the dude, like you said, is a genius. I think he's playing 12D chess, because he retweeted himself from 2002 saying, Romney votes are switching to Obama, watch the voting machines, in 2012.
2012, yeah.
So 4 years before he ran for president, or before the election, right? And that's a long time back, and there's multiple times he said stuff about that back then. So he knew, and he had a lot of money, so maybe he knew some people and got into some people and knew that there was voting.
Probably knew because he was a part of the scheme.
So then I think if that was the case, if he knew, then I think he would have, he would have been surprised that he himself won the election then in 2016.
I think he was.
I think
and if you watch how his cabinet went together, I don't think that he knew.
He ran.
There was no one more surprised
to
than
get
Donald Trump.
Exactly.
Yeah, no one.
So he won it. Hillary's excited. So just run with me with that narrative for a second. So say it is rigged, and it's rigged, and he figured out. He's like, the only I can do this is if I do it from the inside, right? Wins, super shocked that he wins, and he's like, shoot, what do I do now? And starts to run with it. In 2018, so 2 years ago, September 12th, 2018, puts in an executive order that says anytime there's an election in the United States, we are under a state of emergency. We've been on that under a state of emergency since 2018, right a month before the midterm elections. And what that stated was there will be a 45-day deep dive into all election fraud after that. And they will be reported directly to the heads of DOD, the intelligence agencies, and the House executive branch, so the office of the president. Following 45 days after the election. Put into that place 2 years ago. Did nothing. Okay? That's where he could figure out exactly how they would do things. Come to this one, he's dropping hints. Don't do the mail-in ballot. The mail-in ballot's going to be bad things. That's the way you can inject things. Everyone should go vote in person. If you're voting for me, go vote in person. Don't vote in these mail-in ballots. That's where a lot of fraud comes from. He's already said that in 2012. And then it all happens. I think he was expecting to either marginally win, find the fraud in that 45 days, and start to drain the swamp of people that did it because now he has evidence on how to do it. Or he was expecting to be in the very spot that he's at right now and have a lot of people make mistakes.
Yeah, well, the other thing, though, I mean, is you just said, like, he told all his voters to vote on election day, right?
But some states they couldn't.
And yet, true, some states they couldn't. But people, and for whatever reason, Republicans were more swayed to that way of voting, and that's fine. But again, it's another thing that he set it up, get all the Republicans to vote on the day of election, and then of course there's going to be these huge dumps of ballots that are all going to come in Democrat, because
that's how they
no Republicans voted like mail-in, right? And very few Republicans voted mail-in, and then it can be like, well, I mean, it's outrageous. How is it possible that 160,000 votes came in and they were all Democrat? It's just...
except that's where it gets weird, because I would be with you if it was split or something like that. But when they came in, and so some of them were before they were saying they were going to start recounting again, the numbers were coming in, and a lot of them were no down tickets. Why? So I would be with you, except there's these. That's where I said, like, you kind of have to. If I just heard what you said, I'd be like, yeah, that makes sense, because that's what CNN was saying the night of, and they were like, the next day they're like, well, we knew this. We knew that people would be predominantly Joe Biden with the mail-in ballots, but if you go look at them, they're no down tickets, and he's the only person that has, like, in all these key states, he has like 135,000 votes for him that voted for no one else.
Here's the thing, though: if Trump really wanted to combat voter fraud, what he should have done was told all Republicans, vote mail-in. Vote mail-in. Mail in your votes.
Yeah.
Honestly, that's what he should have done if he really wanted to avoid fraud. But he didn't want to avoid fraud. He's hoping to God there was
Except
fraud.
that a lot of the ones that have been lost were mail-in ones that were for him that showed up. So the ones that were in Georgia were mail-in ballots on a card. And
the counter to that, Jono, would be, I guess I don't know. If a machine is compiling all the data, if it was, maybe there was a way that the machines couldn't fraudulently activate when you're in there in person versus if you're doing the mail-in, there was some way of manipulating them. Maybe that would be the area that there would be.
See, and that's where I think that we'll see what happens with Georgia, but Georgia had all the different things that they're talking about. So it had dumped ballots. It had data that got messed with and lost. It had a bunch of, like, they've already shredded a bunch of evidence, like shredded ballots and stuff. They're supposed to keep it for 22 months by federal law. And they have video and picture of them in garbage cans going to the shredder and in the shredder driving away. So that's weird. That's
weird.
So that's strange. Like, if anything else, it's just weird.
Yeah. Look, there's definitely some weird stuff
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
Can't
And if it
deny
comes out that it's like this huge organization that they somehow cracked, I want it to be found.
And look, that's where I'll agree with you, is if in fact your crazy theories are right. No, they're not crazy. I'm just giving you a hard time.
You can call them crazy. I don't want them to be right.
No, but
Like,
I mean, if they are right, though, I absolutely 100% want it to come out.
Yeah.
I definitely want it to come out.
Right.
Because this needs
And that's
to be...
where some of the people that have come out on affidavit were people that moved here from other countries that went through voter fraud, that had, Chavez keep getting reelected. And they said, this is what happened. In the middle of the night, they would shut off the voting machines and we'd wake up and he'd be winning every time.
That's interesting.
And they said that's how it does it. If someone else is winning, they shut off the counters and they start up the next day, and then all of a sudden he's ahead by 100,000 votes. And they said, I watched it happen my entire life. And when I came here, I said, oh my gosh, it's happening here too.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Anyway.
Look, and I will say, you obviously you've done your research and you know what you're talking. And like I can sit here and I can listen to some of the stuff you're saying, and I'm like, I got no explanation for it. I think more than anything, I just really want to believe that this wouldn't happen.
Me too.
I'm
with you. But what I wish would happen is that people would do like what we're doing, and there are a lot of people that are doing that. And I wish the mainstream media, but I'm sure they're bought. If this is all true, it makes sense that they wouldn't say anything, because if you can control what people hear, you can control what people think. Like we know that. We know that. And so they won't say, hey, we have a statistician here to talk about this data that they said is flawed. And they can't, because it looks flawed. Like you could twist it all you want, but the only argument they have, and it's frustrating because we've all met people like this, is they'll say, you come to me and you're like, hey, I think that someone stole some money from me and whatever. And then I turn to Curtis and I say, Curtis, Jono looks funny. And that's my only argument. It's like, Jono keeps saying funny things, and he sweat when he came in the room, and he stunk.
Yeah.
And that's my only argument. I looked stupid.
Yeah.
And that's what the media looks like right now. They look like dumb buffoon clowns because they won't talk about what's going on, even if they don't believe in it. They're
choosing the narrative.
They say, we won't show you this because it's not true. Like, well, who gets to decide that?
Yeah, it's difficult. It's difficult
We
because they
should
are
be allowed
choosing
to
a
make
narrative.
we should be allowed to make our own decisions.
Yeah.
But I would say that the media also, in general, it seems like they have put upon themselves a supposed responsibility not to show or tell false news.
They say that.
Right? That's what they say.
Yeah.
So when they say, I'm not going to show false news, how do we know that you're not showing false news, essentially?
Right. Yeah. It's like we say, like,
it goes
hey,
on both on Fox News and on CNN.
So we can say tonight, for sure, none of what we said is based, some of it's based in fact. Like the data is fact. You go download, you go look at it. You go look at the Michigan data, go look at the bottom. You can see that there's no registered voters. Like that's all fact. Like you can go get that data and I'll put those links in the show notes and everything. But like you shouldn't just take our word for it. And so these things that we're talking about, that's journalism. Like,
well, it'd be like
you go look at the data, you talk to the people and say, this is what we found, and then you can draw your conclusions. This is what we think.
On both spectrums, though, it would be like if you had a research study, a medical study, and they're saying these are the results and these are absolutely the truth.
Yes.
These other studies, not the truth. But then they're not linking any of their sources. They're not showing any of their specific data to why they actually believe and make those claims and conclusions.
And what's funny is
both sides have
these
done
are the
that,
same people that say, hey, you know what? We don't like Republicans because they don't like to follow the science. If you follow the science, climate change is there. Cool. Perfect. Let's go with that for a second. I have a theory and a hypothesis that fraud happened because I see these things out of whack. Let's test it because that's science.
Right. And that sounds fantastic.
It makes sense.
Yeah. It's hard when you see on media on either side. It frustrates me when I see them saying the other side is saying these false, fraudulent claims. Because it's like, well, is it? Who are you to tell me it is? Yeah. But then if it is fraudulent, show me.
And that's the thing is people write articles all the time and they do like either a retraction or they do an update and they say, hey, further evidence came out. This is what it is. Like that's been in the papers. That's been journalism all the time. Never have I ever seen media so blatantly just tell me what I can and can't hear. You know what it does is it makes everyone say, I'm going to go somewhere else. I don't trust you right now.
Well, that's what happened with Trump. That's why Trump got elected in a way, because they were tired of politicians telling them specifically how they had to act. How
this is where like I think he did plan this, and there's another reason why is because in that executive order, Jono, get this. So not only if people are complicit in it, any assets that are inside the United States will be frozen if they're involved in voting fraud. So if that's Facebook put money into it and they're caught on the books, they get their assets frozen. If Dominion assets are frozen. But, and that all makes sense. Like if you're caught in fraud and everything, you should get tried and have that happen. There's a process for that.
Yeah.
But it also says that if media passes false narrative or false information that is found to be swaying an election, they are also complicit. And what has he said since he started running? I don't like the fake news.
Yeah.
Squirrely Dan. Crazy.
I have a TIL for you.
Yeah. Hit me up, buddy.
Today I learned, and I picked this one for you because of your crazy weird thing that you told me the other night. Sloths lose a third. Sloths lose a third of their body weight when they poop, which happens once a week on the ground and in the standing position.
A third of their body weight?
That's fantastic. That's fantastic.
Boom.
Today I learned about the symbiotic relationships of wolves and ravens. Ravens will lead wolves to prey so they can take a portion of the leftovers. They play games of tail chasing with each other and develop individual friendships.
Wolves?
Ravens and wolves.
And ravens. That's
I got another
weird.
TL. You got any other ones?
No, that's the only one I had.
Okay,
I saw sloths and I just stopped.
Yeah, it's perfect.
Full stop.
I'll have to I'll have to tell you that. I'll have to tell you that sloth fact.
Do it right after this one.
Okay, today I learned during the early years of the Tour de France, guzzling alarming amounts of alcohol was the norm. Beer, wine, and brandy were considered a safer drink than water.
What?
From questionable roadside wells and springs. And
that makes sense. That totally makes sense.
Cyclists drank copious amount of alcohol during the Tour de France, typically.
Wow.
Because they'd rather be drunk than have diarrhea.
I would watch that.
That is, yeah.
So
the
sloth
sloth
fact.
Thing, tell him.
It was. Did I
He
say
called me. He like sent me a voice message. He goes, "I thought you want a fun fact to deviate away from all this research you're doing."
Yeah. Okay. So, was it a third? Was it a third?
No.
The number?
You said it was like no. Most sloths die of suicide.
The majority of sloths deaths come from suicide, because sloths move so slowly up a tree that they often grab the arm that's already holding a branch, and when they're pulling themselves up from their other arm, they let go and fall down the tree to the ground and die.
That's amazing.
Majority of sloth deaths. Classic sloths, man.
That is
all right.
So
shower
good.
thoughts.
Yeah, shower thoughts.
All right.
Band-Aids super need to be easier to open with one hand.
Very good point. Very good observation. Very
Why?
good point.
Because you cut your other hand.
You're like bleeding, and you're like,
how many times have you tried to put a Band-Aid on with one hand bleeding?
No, never. I always get someone else to do it for me.
See, you got friends. You got lots of friends, though. Remember, you got lots of friends.
True, I got lots of friends.
You got lots of friends
all over the world.
All over the world. Yeah, that's right.
Hey, dude, can I make a trip to San Diego? I really need help putting this Band-Aid on.
Okay. So the wax in each ear is the same material, right? Like it's wax. It's wax in our ear. But using a cotton or a Q-tip that's already been in one ear, in the other ear, feels
gross.
like contamination and just wrong.
Well, it's already full.
Like thinking about a used Q-tip, your right ear, putting that into your left ear. Oof.
Disgusting.
That feels pretty raw.
Yeah, that's gross.
That feels pretty dirty.
Yeah.
If you don't smoke pot because you're afraid it'll make you paranoid, you're experiencing the side effects without even smoking it.
That's hilarious. Okay, true.
Good.
Okay, this is actually a shower thought that I've thought about several times. But some of the people who demand tolerance are the ones that often display the least of it.
It's true.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually all the people.
Yeah.
100% of the people that demand tolerance don't
Intolerant.
reciprocate.
Yeah, that is true.
That's the problem right now. It's so weird that we're not supposed to get together for the holidays, but Black Friday is still a thing at the malls.
Oh,
Is it actually,
Is
though?
it gonna be?
Is it? I don't know.
A lot of places have said they're not. Well, they're not doing it Thanksgiving, but they're still opening a day after Thanksgiving.
Really?
Wow,
How
Interesting.
screwed up is that?
that's so stupid. So we're all. Hang on, just to clarify. So we're all gonna do Thanksgiving in our own houses with the 2 measly little people that we live with, and then the day after.
I will openly say right now,
I
I
mean,
am getting
yeah.
together with 1 billion people.
No, I am too. I'm not.
I'm going to invite Kate Brown.
I'm not adhering to that. But the next day, we can go to the stores with crowds of people.
I wonder if they have to have some type of limits, I imagine.
They
Like
gotta.
store limits.
It's
I don't know.
madness.
Okay, my last shower thought.
I don't understand.
All undiscovered species of birds are technically UFOs.
I have 2 more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have 2 more. So the Matrix would have been 100% successful if they had used cows instead of humans.
Cows
Yeah.
instead of humans.
Yeah, because the cow brain would not have likely tried to hack their way out of the Matrix.
That's true.
Yeah, or any mammal, really.
Okay, last one. This one's really good. You're going to love it. A bottomless pit is technically the safest pit.
Yeah. It's true.
Yeah, as long as you don't hit the sides.
Yeah, just don't hit the sides and
Don't hit the
you're
sides.
good.
You're good.
If it's super wide, yeah, dude.
Yeah, you're good. That's called space.
Just
Have you-
That's what that's called.
Have you heard
outer
about like
sp-
the
that's
deepest
outer,
hole they ever dug?
That's outer space, is what that's called.
And it's like miles and miles and miles
yeah, it's in
deep.
Russia, right?
And they finally stopped because they thought they were getting to hell because it got so hot you couldn't even
like
survive down there.
Melting the rods or something. Yeah, crazy. Jono, thank you so
amazing.
much, bro, for coming on. Appreciate
Yeah.
you, man.
No, thank
You're
you
awesome.
guys. It was great. Loved
All
it.
right. Guys, we'll have a fantastic week out there. We'll see what happens in the next 1 to 2 weeks pertaining to SCOTUS and
Yeah,
the elections.
there was one thing I didn't get to. I think we'll probably talk more about that next week.
Yeah.
But there's something that we do need to talk about next week.
Yeah.
And that is the Senate hearing
Mhm.
with Facebook and Twitter.
Ooh, yeah. I'll love to talk about that.
That's true. But I have a
yeah.
favor to
Yep,
ask.
go for it.
Yeah.
So once George has decided,
Yeah.
may I please return to the podcast?
Oh my God.
Yeah.
We would.
Whatever week
We demand
that is.
it. We demand it. Absolutely.
Well, let's do this because this has been so crazy.
Yeah.
We'll wait until they've decided the presidency because
Great.
it could
Excellent.
flip like 14 times and
Excellent.
we'd go to lunch like
do it.
14 times
Yeah,
together.
we'll go to lunch
Yeah.
so many times. Yeah, so once they've decided the presidency, I'll come back.
If SCOTUS decides it, it's not going back. But so we could call it then. How
Yeah.
about that?
Sounds good.
If SCOTUS decides it.
I love it.
yeah.
Okay.
Also, I'm gonna go to the lunch. I don't care who pays, but I'm gonna go to it.
Jordan will
too.
be paying, so
All
it'll
right.
be
Perfect.
great.
Where are we going to go?
Sizzlers.
Yeah, I don't know.
Go
We
to
don't know.
Sizzlers.
Well, I guess we'll go somewhere and get takeout and then eat in the
wherever's
car.
open.
Oh,
Wherever's
that's true.
open.
Things have got to
Yeah.
be open.
Whatever's
What the
open.
heck? If it's not, I'll make you really good food. How's that?
Great.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Ooh, Traeger. There we go.
And we'll have Moscow mules.
Yeah.
Oh, that sounds
I'll make
wonderful.
the mosques.
Okay.
Yeah.
We should do that anyway.
Yeah, I know.
We should,
seriously.
actually.
Man, I hope I lose.
It's gotta itch.
It's like,
Gotta
why
itch.
did Trump lose? I made him lose because I really wanted a Moscow mule. You couldn't just make it anyway.
All right,
Shoot.
guys. Thank you so much for listening.
So
We'll
good.
check you later. Have a good week.
See ya.
Love y'all. Peace.